don't know a ton about oxalates. I know from you that they are naturally occurring tiny molecules that are toxic, corrosive acid.
Alright, en ons is live. Kom ons kyk wie is hier so. Ons gaan nou live gaan. En ons sien net gaan die mense kans om in te kom op die live. Ons gaan oor oxalates praat. Oxalates. So wat is oxalates? So oxalates kom voor hoofsaaklik in groen groentes. Ja, so broccoli en spinasie, al die dinge. Dit is waar oxalates is. So as jy onder die mikroskoop na oxalates kyk, jy sien dit lyk soos messe onder die mikroskoop. Hallo Shanay, RNF. Daar sê visie is hier so. Ons praat oor oxalates vandag. Ons gaan ook oor oxalate dumping praat. Ons praat oor die carnivore dieet. Die persoon wat daar so op die skerm is Kelly Hogan. Net hier so bietjie lig toemaak. En behoort nou beter te kan sien. Alright, so Johanna is hier so. En visie, kom ons kyk, RNF soekie so. Alright, kom ons begin die video, ons kyk. Alright.
Norton, the queen of all things oxalate.
Kijk, kom ons probeer weer.
Hi everybody and welcome back to my Zero Carb Life. I am thrilled today to have Sally K. Norton, the queen of all things oxalate and the author of Toxic Superfoods. So Sally, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. It's really great to be with you.
So Sally and I have hung out in person a couple of times now, and I know that we jive, which makes this all the more exciting. It's good. And I was taking a walk with you at the last retreat, and you and I were talking about a few things, oxalates, and you said, I really appreciate that you are sharing that with some of the carnivores. And I thought, you know what, let's just have a talk here today about what do you wish I would share with the carnivores about oxalates. So I don't know a ton about oxalates. I know from you that they are naturally occurring tiny molecules that are toxic, corrosive acids made by plants. And so I'm just curious, let people know kind of briefly, but what got you interested in this world of oxalates? Were you just living your best life and were like, you know what, that's fascinating, I'm going to study that?
I do love fascination, and I am a curious person, but I had way too many reasons to be curious about oxalate, because I started having health problems as a little kid, and I was always a good eater, eating my vegetables and doing everything right and being an active kid and a happy kid and all of that. And I was already getting bad at age 12. I'm having arthritis. And then I bombed out at Cornell where I was getting my nutrition degree with foot problems and never really recovered. And I spent my 20s using crutches, painkillers, wheelchairs. I spent my whole adult life not being able to wear heels or dance or run or do sports. I would have loved to do racquetball and have fun and do ultimate frisbee. None of that was optional for me. I was not able to use my body how I'd like, and I had all kinds of arthritis, I had all kinds of fatigue, I had problems with mental energy. Oh my gosh, it got so bad that I ended up having to quit my faculty position and have a hysterectomy. I was bleeding to death, I had endometriosis, I had severe back problems, so I had to kneel on the floor because I couldn't sit very well. My whole back is shredded with flattened discs and holes in the bones. I had osteoporosis, or penia, technically osteopenia, right at the edge of osteoporosis. Like, I'm super healthy. I have a degree in nutrition. I eat organic. I eat home cooked. I don't eat out. I avoid, excessive alcohol. Don't do drugs. Like, why am I falling apart?
Right.
Because of my healthy diet. Didn't find that out till I was almost 50 years old. Now that I'm 60, I'm starting to have a life. I can do a lot with my body now that I haven't been able to do my whole life.
Yeah, I saw you running up and down hills, keeping up with Dr. Sean Baker with your little six-pack going. I'm like, okay, Sally Norton, I see you. Looking good. And yeah, hanging out with you, walking, trotting uphill.
We were running backwards up a hill in the rain 5 times, and then we hopped up the hill. Then we bear crawled up the hill, and before that, we did like 20 minutes of hopping around before that, and I kept up with people in their late 30s, and I'm 60. You're someone who spends so much time in a wheelchair.
Amazing. So I think the part of the interview that you probably need to spend the most time on with most audiences is the plants were the problem. These foods are super toxic. Like, we've got to cut them out of the diet. And I'm like, well, most people
We're there now.
We're there. Most people on this channel
It's so nice to hang out with meat eaters who get that plants are not your friends. It's
Right.
so fun.
You don't have to talk us out of kale, like or spinach. Mark safe, okay? But what I want to know is what you wish carnivores understood better. So if people have been eating an oxalate-heavy diet, probably trying to do the best thing possible like you were, and then they realize, oh my gosh, I feel like garbage, my health is declining, I'm going to go carnivore. Yes, and here I am. That's right. Let's do this. Cut out these plants. As the oxalate queen, what would you like for people to know about that process? How to make it easier and how to go through that?
Right. So what is hidden to the knowledge of academic people and clinical people and the whole kind of what humans know is that we carry a burden of oxalate crystals in our bodies because we grow up on sweet potatoes and potato chips and French fries and peanut butter and chocolate, and then we get all grown up and we start adding a lot of beets and spinach and berries and silly things like kiwi and quinoa and buckwheat. We pile on these foods that contain a lot of oxalate day in and day out. It's just there. It's just part of what we do. And what happens is that it overwhelms the body's ability to cope, and it's so constant that it sets up shop in your tissues. So you have these little crystals, not just in your kidneys, where you can end up with kidney stones, not just irritating your bladder, where you end up waking up at night to pee, but in your thyroid gland and in your tendons. It's very much attracted to joints, tendons, and fascia. So your connective tissue can be loaded with this stuff. When you quit eating the French fries and the spinach salads and the smoothies and the chocolate and the buckwheat, etc., you now give the body a chance for the first time ever to get rid of the mess.
Yeah.
And some people, we don't have the science, we don't have the interest to find out who's going to react how when we switch off the plants and quit all that oxalate and the tannins and the lectins and all the plant chemicals. But oxalate is really the one, really the one. And some people get into trouble within 4 or 5 days of dropping the plants. And they start feeling sick. And they think, oh, this is like a Herx reaction, or I can't handle the butter, or it's too much meat, too much fat. Like, they get worried. And what it's important for everyone to know, it's not the meat.
Yeah.
It's the plants. All over again. You've been poisoned by plants. You're loaded with a body burden of plant chemicals that is now these nasty little crystals. This is like being full of asbestos.
Okay. Yeah.
Your immune system has to get it out of your tissues, which is inflammatory, and all things can happen. You get gout, you get skin reactions, you get cloudy urine, you get kidney stones because you're now mobilizing crystals. That's a tough job. That's inflammatory. You're releasing it into your bloodstream. That lowers calcium in your bloodstream and causes you to have funny symptoms because it makes the nerves spasm and be toxic, and you get hiccups and tremors and heart arrhythmias, and you get out of the emergency room with hypertension and heart arrhythmias. Your blood pressure goes all over. Your glycemic control goes all over. If you're high oxalate, you can be sort of diabetic. So you can have a diabetes crises when the oxalate's coming back into the bloodstream.
Yeah.
All kinds of weird stuff, and you're thinking, oh man, this only meat thing is pretty toxic. But not everybody gets that reaction right away. And some people have come to me. I've been interviewed by carnivores, and one in particular said he was now in his 6th year carnivore. He's just now seeing the oxalate clearing symptoms. Wow. It took him 6 years before that happened. So if you have a history of leaky gut or taking NSAIDs or other things that would give you leaky gut, if your family has a history of poor kidney health, chances are your system's really burdened with oxalate. And that's true for most of us, but some people are handling it more gracefully than others, and they just get on and off hip pain, on and off cranky knee, a little bit of crunchy joints, little things that you can just ignore and are not crises. But people who are really mobilizing a lot of oxalate can get quite sick. And it may not happen that first week. It might happen 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 8 years out. Like there's a point where if you have a history of eating these foods or you have a history of leaky gut, you're going to have to manage this body burden of oxalate.
So I hear it from the carnivore coach side. You get somebody who says, I signed up for your class and I was so excited, but as soon as I started, I've even had people say, I need a refund because I started carnivore and now I have kidney stones and my very first gout flare-up. And I'm like, what? From the meat side of it, like, how? Meat doesn't cause gout. Oh, we know that.
Crystals do.
But the crystals do. Yeah. And at one point, I thought maybe this oxalate thing is kind of overblown because we only work from our own experience, right? Oxalates are hugely important to you because you lived it. I converted to carnivore, felt good, kept feeling good. Everybody should just feel good. Ta-da! Right? Yeah.
I'd love to be you.
2 people in my current town right now, tiny little place, Silva. 2 people I know have converted to carnivore. One had a massive gout flare-up. The other, I just saw at Walmart a couple weeks ago, and he said, I'm not even kidding, Kelly. There are little clear crystals, looks like salt, coming through my skin. And I said, okay, hang tight. I have an interview I really want to do with my friend Sally Norton, because the more people you talk to, the more you realize, yeah, it's a thing. It didn't happen to me, but it happens to a lot of people, and it's painful, and it scares them away from meat. And that's, of course, heartbreaking to me.
Heartbreaking to me, too. And I just felt like when I started getting interest from the carnivore community, like, this is perfect because you guys are putting people on a zero oxalate diet and revealing a hidden health problem that's missing in medical science. And you're on the edge of science, and yet without this knowledge of what I'm explaining about the accumulation and the body's need to get rid of it.
Ek is gou hallo sê vir almal. Hoorie baie dankie vir almal wat ingeskakel het. Adele, Letitia, Stefanus, almal van julle baie dankie. Ja, en wil julle nie asseblief die like knoppie druk, laat die live bietjie live gaan. Hierdie is nou 'n reaksie video. Dit is Kelly Hogan wat praat met Sally Norton en sy Kelly Hogan is 'n 15 jaar karnivoor. En Evan, my seun is ook besig om 'n video te kyk daar. In elk geval, Kelly Hogan is al 15 jaar karnivoor en sy sê hierso, sy sien oxalate dumping in haar coaching kliënte. En onthou nou, die keto word en die karnivoor, of althans die keto word en die keto gee hoë oksalaat produkte, die typiese donker groente, dis ongelukkig hoog in oksalaat. In die begin van hierdie live het ek gesê, hoe lyk die oxalates? Het lyk soos messe onder 'n mikroskoop. Nou, dit is plantverdedigingsmeganismes. Jy kry lectins en jy kry oxalates en jy kry tannins en polyphenols en verskillende planttoksines. Dis nie daar vir jou voordeel nie, dis plantverdedigingsmeganismes en jy sal nou hoor wat sy nog meer daaroor te sê het. Ek weet gou klaar groet hier so Shamaine en Morney en Adele en Wild Timmer is hier, Johannes ook hier so, Ruben en Jolly en Moras en ja, dan sê julle, baie dankie vir julle wat die baie dankie vir julle wat die live alreeds gelike het. So, alright, so kom ons kyk verder.
Shows up, we're not really giving ourselves a chance to learn as a community. So it's really important as the meat-eating community who's downplaying these plants and downplaying the fiber and all that stuff that is the mainstream advice. this needs to grow. This comfort with meat and this understanding of the downsides of the plant need to grow. And the carnivore community is the heart of that. The life-changing effects that it has is so profound, and if people don't recognize the crystals coming out of your eyes and cheeks and your tartar in your teeth and the cloudy urine and the funny rashes and peeling skin and the cranky hip, all these things are actually how the body's healing from oxalate, which is your old French fries coming back to get you.
Hey, the buildup on the back of the teeth,
Yes.
I didn't even think about that as oxalates. But you know what? Throughout, I've now eaten, I don't use any plants whatsoever except for coffee and seasonings. That's it. The only plants I've had, it's been about 15 years now. You would think, wow, I should surely be off of, done with this oxalate thing. To this day, I will still have periods where I will get the buildup on the back of my teeth, and then periods when I don't. I'm like, what is different? What's happening? That could be it, huh?
That's what it is.
That's fascinating.
Because your spine bones and your big bones in your body all have oxalate in them, and you're nicely still clearing it out. There's a burden that seems to have a bottomless pit in our bodies, and your body is handling it so beautifully. That tartar, that extra gunk in the back of the teeth, is evidence that the blood level of oxalate has gone up during that time, because the saliva glands will concentrate the oxalate in the blood 10 to 30 times the level in the blood. And so when there's more of it in the saliva, you get more of that buildup on the teeth.
My dental hygienist, she went total carnivore also, and she, unlike myself, I think part of the reason my transition was so easy was, first of all, I was pretty young, so I couldn't have had, 40 years of plants behind me. I was only 25 years old.
There you go.
My health wasn't very good, though, but it wasn't lots of high oxalate foods. I was eating a lot of sugar, so it wasn't just the oxalates for me. I had a lot of issues. But this lady had been vegan, super, squeaky clean, healthy diet was her whole deal. And she is, I'm going to guess, mid-50s. So when she went carnivore, crystals through her forehead, painful urination, UTIs, and she's like, I don't think this meat thing, I don't know if it's for me. But all three of these people, Sally, my butcher, the guy at Walmart, and the hygienist had all done some Googling, and thank goodness all three of them mentioned you in the conversation to me. One of the three already had your book, and the others had just used your resources online, interviews, and website to figure out enough to say, I don't think it's the meat causing it, it's what I ate before. And that's what I think is so important for people to realize. Based on what you've seen work, would you prefer that somebody slowly lower their plant intake when they go carnivore?
That's the way we're teaching it now, because, and the theory is that your body is kind of used to a current level of intake. So if you're up here in the danger zone of intake where you've done smoothies or things like that, where you can have 1 gram or 2 grams or 2.5 grams of oxalate a day, which is very, very toxic, the body is just really struggling. And if you can not be too aggressive in changing all things, because you're also changing your microbiome when you take away fiber. You're changing a lot of things, and so there's a lot of adaptations the body's making to the different fuel and the different compounds. So if you lower the trauma to the body by going gradually, you give the body a chance to kind of adjust. It's just like you don't start running marathons on day one. You start walking around the block after dinner, and then you start trotting around the block, and then you start going longer and longer. So you want to think of it like that, like I'm training for a marathon. So we don't want to wake up this deposit problem in the body. We want to leave everything where it is so your body can adjust. So you take in enough oxalate so you don't turn on that excessive mobilization of all these crystals in your thyroid gland and your spine and wherever else it is. So that's the justification or the rationale for going slowly, because overall it helps your whole body adjust, and it reduces the chance that the body's going to have this massive vomiting of crystals in ways that lights up your immune system, turns on immune problems, causes a huge amount of disruption and pain, and is fairly dangerous.
So a lot of us in the carnivore space came here because of sugar obsession and sweet obsession. So for many of us, we tried to turn that off like an off switch. And in just a few days, we're free from that. So telling people, well, maybe just add some things back in to slow down this process. It wouldn't have to involve anything sugary or sweet, right? You're not.
No, it could be tea. In fact, if you've already gone, and most people don't do that gradual change. It takes a certain personality to be that structured.
Yes.
And cut things back in a gradual way. I mean, the usually simple way I say, if you're eating a lot of almonds, start with the almonds, and then go with the peanuts, and then the cashews, then the spinach, then the this, then the that, and just kind of think of it one food at a time, of finding, more butter, more meat, more eggs, more something else, even other plants, because this isn't just for carnivores. You can help a vegan feel better, and maybe in the start they can only, in their mind, stomach a few shrimp or some cottage cheese in the beginning and get them comfortable with the idea of getting away from the high oxalate foods. That'll free up their toxic brains to feel less anxious and hear their bodies cry for better nutrition and help them get towards being comfortable with eating meat again. So it's really important that we understand this is for everyone, to learn that the almonds and the spinach and so on are not your friend. So doing that, there's a way to do that gradually, but I think the majority, especially if they're learning through the carnivore enthusiasm, are like, all right, I'm chopped.
Yes.
That was yesterday, tomorrow it's meat all the way, and here I go. And now you're already there. Yes. And at some point, whether it's 3 days or 3 years later, you've got to manage the fact that your system may be overly reacting to crystals in the tissues, causing immune inflammation that can include gout attacks and so on. And now you've got to figure out how to get out of that excessive mobilization and quiet it down. And you do that by telling the body, no, I'm going to eat some oxalate, and you'll know there's no more room in the bloodstream for all that from the thyroid gland or from your backbone. So we add things like tea, usually 2 tea bags, strong tea. If that's working for you, you can tell you feel better within an hour.
Oh, that's
anxious. Yeah, really fast. So if you don't feel good within an hour, it's not enough. Tea is a watery solution, and that solubility in the wateriness of it allows it to quickly get into the bloodstream. So it's a quick, fast, fully effective, 100% dose. So even though it's only 35 or 40 milligrams, it's pretty effective. So those liquidy things and the high solubility things are helpful. But that's why juicing is so toxic, because it's liquid and you're absorbing it. For some people, I tell them to get a jar of beet juice from the store, and if they're feeling really sick, use a jigger or 2 of beet juice as medication. You can medicate yourself with oxalate. You might be able to add that too as a way of upping the oxalate in the body.
Sy het nou iets interessant hier gesê. Ek weet net gou wie hallo sê, so Stefanus RNF, daar sê, Laffie, Dolphin is hier so, Chantal, Peggy, Daleen, hallo julle, Esje, Jaco is ook hier, hallo Jaco, Bianchi, en ja, Leon, julle baie dankie dat julle is. Ja, druk bykie die like knopie, dat die meer mense die live sien. So het nou iets interessant hier gesê van tee, ne? Ek wil nou net gou klein bykie rewind, 1855, en kom ons kyk daar so, wat sê sy?
Wateriness of it allows it to quickly get bags, strong tea, if that's working for you.
Alright, kom ons hoor daar so.
Figure out how to get out of that excessive mobilization and quiet it down. And you do that by telling the body, no, I'm going to eat some oxalate, and you'll know there's no more room in the bloodstream for all that from the thyroid gland or from your backbone. So we add things like tea, usually 2 tea bags, strong tea. If that's working for you, you can tell you feel better within an hour.
Oh, that's
anxious. Yeah, really fast. So if you don't feel good within an hour, it's not enough. Tea is a watery solution, and that solubility in the wateriness of it allows it to quickly get into the bloodstream. So it's a quick, fast, fully effective, 100% dose. So even though it's only 35 or 40 milligrams, it's pretty effective. So those liquidy things and the high solubility things are helpful. But that's why juicing is so toxic, because it's liquid and you're absorbing it. For some people, I tell them to get a jar of beet juice from the store, and if they're feeling really sick, use a jigger or two of beet juice as medication. You can medicate yourself with oxalate. You might be able to add that too as a way of upping oxalate in the body to tell the peripheral tissues, keep holding on to your crystals. Just leave them alone, tell them, calm down the immune system, and you can live your life. Because when you start digging out crystals out of tissues, it can make you pretty miserable.
Is the goal to eventually get them out though? Slowly?
The body's going to still clear oxalate. You're still healing. Like, you've mostly been able to do it without symptoms.
Right.
Right. It's been happening in the background and you didn't know it, but you do know with the tartar that you're seeing something going on, and yet it's not ruining your life. So
Right.
at that level, it seems perfectly fine. So as long as you're not having a lot of symptoms and you don't feel inflamed, or like you have an autoimmune problem, you don't feel like your mood is wrong, or you can't think straight, or you can't sleep, or you're waking up to pee. If none of those things are, you're probably okay. But when you start feeling ill, it's important to use the oxalate as medication. I'm really interested in food addiction and food disorders, because I'm a nutrition background, and I had some of this myself and struggled with this myself. And I found it fascinating early on that friends and followers found that going low oxalate cured them of their addictions. The plant chemicals, especially oxalate, is partly what makes us addicts. Now, you can get dopamine hits from your phone and from your apps. Okay, I don't know how to cure that. Technology is an addiction for sure. But when it comes to the biochemistry of your body, once you're not toxic and once you get the inflammation down, see, this is another reason to control that oxalate clearing, because every time you're oxalate clearing, you're poisoning your brain and your nerves, and you're going to be more despondent, more despairing, more powerless, more anxious, more unmotivated, apathetic, and disinterested in all things good. You're going to have a hard time with your mood. And that is a sign of oxalate clearing if you're not eating the oxalates often.
I have heard people going through that exact description when they start carnivore. And I have thought, well, it's probably you've been addicted to these foods and now you're trying to get dopamine hits without these addictive foods. But you're saying that's a strong symptom of the actual oxalate dumping. So in that case, what is your advice? Keep it low, power through, or
get some tea. If you can do tea, keep some strong tea in the refrigerator, like ultra strong. Keep some there, and when you don't feel good, go have a cup of tea, a glass of tea.
Do seasonings have oxalates in it?
They do. They do. The cumin, the turmeric, the black pepper. So switching to white pepper if you really want to be, but with carnivore, maybe the black pepper is helping you.
Well, that's what I've wondered. Should somebody going through oxalate dumping and having symptoms, my friends here in Silva even, who are having crystals come through their skin and gout flare-ups, would it actually be a little better for them to continue seasoning their food with the black pepper and the turmeric and cumin?
You definitely need to experiment with that. Play with it with your own body, because it's hard to give straight advice about this, because I think especially in the addictive sphere, all these plant chemicals have a way of messing with your brain. And so if there is other mechanisms of brain hooks or just brain inflammation, because I really think it's more brain inflammation than anything else, see if it works for you. Now, the spices are not nearly as soluble as tea, so you won't get that nice, quick effect. And what we really want is a message. This is a signal to whoever's reading it, the vascular system, the liver, whatever tissues are reading this, oxalate levels are rising in the blood again. We have to stop clearing from the tissues. Whoever's making those decisions, all the tissues, there's a lot of wisdom in each cell, and all of them communicating with each other. If you can get a sharp signal where there's a sudden rise in oxalate in the bloodstream, it's like, wake up, stop clearing. And so the tea and the beet juice are these examples of very soluble, quick hit of oxalate. So you need to play around with those things. You can look at the charts online. I have some, like a post on spices on my website. You can look at the charts in toxic superfoods. There's many in there. There's new charts available in my new data guide. And I highly recommend, if you're seriously trying to figure out what foods you can use as medication to keep this oxalate dumping from being toxic and ruining your health, because you could create autoimmune conditions, you could create breast cancer, you could create arrhythmias and visits to the emergency room if you don't manage this oxalate clearing. It is so dangerous to be messing around with your electrolytes and turning on your inflammation. stressing out your whole body, you can find through this data ways of using oxalate foods as medication.
Okay. And the way you'll know it's working is you literally feel better, right?
Literally.
Literally. That's what people are looking for. Does the tea make you feel better? And I've been giving people this tea tip. I didn't know to tell them until we took that walk together recently to tell them strong tea, 2 bags at least. But I have been telling people this for a long time, and many people have come back to say, oh my gosh, I felt so much better after the tea. And every time I'm like, wow, she must really be onto something there.
Since it works in real life.
Real life people feel better, Sally, with this advice. Do you have a preferred tea? Like, it doesn't matter.
Something organic, if you could get rid of that nasty tea bag, then the fancier teas have the worst kind of tea bags in terms of microplastics and things like that. So if you can use bulk tea, that's better. But it's black tea is the main thing. If you want to use decaf, it's a little bit lower in oxalate. So again, use a little more.
I live here in North Carolina, and I'm here to tell you most everybody here could go to her pantry and find Lipton tea bags or Louisiana. Okay, that's what we've got.
Perfect.
Yeah, it would do the job. Like,
perfect.
Awesome. Okay.
It's right there. No trip to the drugstore needed. Medicine in the chest.
Okay, great. That's what I always assumed. People were just going to go and pull out of their pantry. I'm sure there are, tea aficionados who can do way better than that. But it's good to know that should at least give them an indication if they're on the right track. Is this really oxalate?
Now, if they're really, really sick, like they've got their hands are twisted in pain and their bladder is at a 10 out of 10 pain scale and they're really, really sick and they've got all kinds of stuff going on, the little bit of tea is not going to be enough. They're going to need 100 milligrams of oxalate, which would be the equivalent of like 5 double teas. So then they may need something like a spoonful of rhubarb or, something really toxic, something more, because you really want the smallest amount you can. And so we go for these normally super illegal foods like rhubarb, which is the worst. But there's ways to do this where you don't use a lot of plant material. You just go for the plants that have the most oxalate.
That makes sense, because a lot of carnivores say, well, I can't handle a lot of these fibrous foods. We came here because of the IBS, a lot of people, right? So we don't want to add back the fibers, but you're saying even just a few bites of something that's highly oxalate. So in a big portion, these would be toxic superfoods. But when your body is having this reaction to quickly dropping it, now in very small amounts, they become medicinal.
Exactly.
Okay.
You're a genius. It's a tricky concept. People don't get it because we're black and white. It's all or nothing with everything.
Yeah, that's right. We say plants are bad, and now she says plants are good. Well,
plants are medicine.
Plants can.
No medicine is non-toxic.
Yeah,
that's why toxicologists study pharmacology and they work for big pharma, because they're trying to figure out how much of a toxin can we give you to not kill you but kind of help you. And that's where you're turning your figs and your whatever into a medicine now, by using them judiciously to help your body deal with the fact that you've been poisoned by modern eating.
Oh, that's a good analogy. Yeah, it'd be like people making giant smoothies out of Tylenol, right? Like, it'll kill you, but if you're sick, a Tylenol could, in a tiny bit, make you feel better.
Yep.
Okay, all right, I'm getting there. All right, Sally, even for people like myself, where we feel like, oh, I'm so glad I'm off of those foods, I don't even feel any symptoms anymore, I'm just a happy little carnivore, a lot of us are feeding other humans who aren't total carnivores, and that's me. I have a husband who loves eating a salad before he eats a big steak. He loves a big steak. He's eating a lot of animal products, but he still wants a salad. And the first time I met you, I mentioned that my husband still enjoys spinach salad. And you were like appalled. So I want people to know that if you are feeding people, feeding your humans at home, Sally's book, Toxic Superfoods, you might have thought, well, I don't really need that because I don't eat those foods. I know better than that. But she has, on page 202, a swap chart. So, like, instead of giving my husband spinach, for example, you'd said, what about just some old iceberg lettuce? Is there anything wrong with iceberg lettuce?
Yeah, exactly. So there's swap charts here, and Toxic Superfoods, and we're talking about chapter 14, I think it is, on page 202. Yeah, so it's 14.2 is the table. And this will give you some really simple things, especially if somebody in your life, your dear mother or your niece or somebody is on a really high oxalate diet, and you want to guide them or show them where to start, or have them over for dinner and give them a medium of oxalate food. You know how to do that. So there's a couple of good videos on my YouTube channel. Edith, for example, look for the Edith video on my YouTube channel where she had both knees were going bad with her meniscus. She was really in trouble, recommended surgery. She changed her diet to low oxalate diet, and now she's perfect.
That's so cool. It's
So cool.
right. So think what most people need to know. If they're eating a lot of oxalates or feeding someone a lot of oxalates, bring that down. You can cut out the sugar immediately and cut out the sweeteners and be free of the addictive stuff. But the plants with all of those oxalates, probably best to bring that down a little slower.
Yeah.
If you start having symptoms because you are one of those go-getters that we do tend to just jump headfirst into things. Carnivores, if you're even considering an all-meat diet, we are all or nothing people. You say oxalates are bad, plants are poison, done. Right. So if they are having symptoms, go for the tea, a little bit of beet juice. Don't judge yourself for it. Just say, my gosh, it's medicinal right now, and it's going to make me feel better, and it's going to keep me from having all these toxins in my bloodstream as I detox. And yeah, that there are some really simple swaps that people can do. I really hope people will turn to page 202 in your book and check out all of those swaps along with the rest of the book, which is fantastic.
You've just beautifully encapsulated this whole issue for people. I just so appreciate you.
I appreciate you. When 3 people in this town can say, I've been going through this, but Sally Norton's content helped me through it, thank you, because they didn't give up on carnivore, because as soon as they Googled symptoms, they found you. And that's beautiful. Thank you so much for being here today and for all that you do and for just being a good friend.
I love you. Thank you.
Sê, dat is 'n baie goeie video, né? Hallo Karina. Ja, Lee, dankie vir die like van die live, ek waardeer dit. Ja, so leer ons. Ek het vandag nou weer geleer, goed wat ek nie geweet het nie. Jy weet, soos byvoorbeeld die swart tee. Ek het nie geweet dat dit kan help met oxalate dumping nie. Sien, nou leer ek ook iets. Ja, en so dit is interessant. Net so 'n stukkie ter inligting. Oxalates of oxalaat of oxalsuur in Afrikaans, ja, is verantwoordelik vir 80% van alle nierstene. 80% van alle nierstene is oxalsuur. Ja. Dolphin sê sy gaan dit probeer. Ja, verseker probeer dit, Dolphin. Laat weet my hoe gaan dit. Dolphin is 'n coaching kliënt van my. En is lekker om saam 'n live te doen, Dolphin. Ek waardeer jou. Dankie vir jou input. Ek waardeer dit opreg. En ja, so Tracy, dankie dat jy hier was. So wat ek nou nog geleer het hierso is dat dit sou, as iemand sukkel met oxalate, is dit dalk beter om die oxalsuur stadig minder te maak. Kom ons sê iemand is nie direk op carnivore nie. En hy was dalk op 'n hoë plant dieet gewees. En hy of sy sukkel met hoë oxalates. Dan is dit beter om dit stadig af te bring. Maar nou ja, soos sy gesê het, jy weet, maar ek het dit al geweet, dat baie keer kan daai kristalle jarelang vassteek in jou. En dit is so. Maar dit is baie interessant. Ja, so ek sal hierdie video, sal ek oplaai op YouTube ook. En ja, dit is deel van die opvoedkundige poging wat ek aanwend. Ek forceer myself om weer sulke video's te kyk en meer sulke video's te kyk. Ek maak sulke tipe video's bymekaar. Ek het al so 150 van hierdie tipe video's. En daai video's moet mens weer 'n keer gaan kyk, want ek beloof jou, as mens dit weer 'n keer kyk, gaan jy nog goed optel wat gesê is wat jy nie die eerste keer opgetel het nie. Hallo Mornay. So dit is belangrik. Sally Norton, jy kan haar boek kry, Kelly Hogan, 15 jaar carnivore. Ek het baie van haar video's. Ek kan haar gerus volg. Ja, so skryf 'n bietjie Wie is nou nog hier so? Lee, baie dankie vir al die likes, en almal wat hier was. Ja, so, nou ja, toe, kom ons kyk of daar 'n vraag is. Ek kyk elke dag iets oor carnivore. Ja, dit is baie goed, Dolphin. Weet, self-education is baie, baie belangrik. En die ding is, as jy, mens moet nooit 'n punt bereik waar jy sê, jy weet alles nie. En ek sê dit nooit, ek leer elke dag. Ek leer elke dag, jy weet, en Izen het hierdie vir my aangestuur. So, baie dankie vir dit. En ja, so dit is baie goed. Nou ja. Alright, ek gaan afsluit en dan gaan ek hierdie oplaai op YouTube. Baie dankie dat julle hier was, ek waardeer dit. Mooi dag daar vir julle. Dankie vir al die likes en almal wat hier was. Mooi dag vir julle.